The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for 5 minutes.
Speaker, for more than 70 years, our government has followed the most spectacular failure in policy since the disastrous 13-year experiment with the prohibition of alcohol. 43 years ago, the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse released a report finding that the federal ban on marijuana is unjustified and inappropriate. Yet, for most of that time, federal policy has been frozen in amber. Countless lives have been ruined for the use of a substance that a majority of Americans now think should be legal. Untold billions of dollars have been spent on a failed effort at prohibition, and still 25 million adults use it every month. Despite a finding in federal law that marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance with no therapeutic value, 213 million Americans live in 34 states and the District of Columbia where medical marijuana is recognized and legal in some form, and over 1 million people use it as medicine. In 1996, voters in California marked a significant change in course when they legalized medical marijuana with a vote of the people, and almost 36 states have followed. In the fall of 2012, voters in the state of Washington and Colorado approved adult use of marijuana. And it should be noted the sky didn't fall, big cracks didn't appear in the earth, and problems with marijuana didn't get worse. In some instances, they became more manageable. For the federal government, the tide continues to turn. Last session of Congress had 6 successful votes on the floor of the House to rationalize our foolish policies, including reining in federal enforcement and opening opportunities for legal industrial hemp cultivation. Last fall, voters in my state of Oregon, looking at the evidence and experience, like in Colorado, approved adult use by an even larger margin than previous state. The marijuana reform train has left the station. It's time for the federal government to redouble its efforts at developing policies that work. Congressman Jared Polis and I will reintroduce this week our legislation to establish a federal framework to end the failed federal prohibition. It will pave the way for states to chart their own course, to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana according to what individual states want to do, just like they do with alcohol. We will save tens of billions of dollars in failed enforcement, incarceration, and lost revenues. We will choke off a profit center for drug cartels that have been enriched by our failed policies. And we will make it easier to enforce laws to keep marijuana out of the hands of our children and have money for government services rather than waste money on failed policy, arresting people for something that a majority of Americans now think should be legal. For those of us who've worked in this field for years, it's an exciting time. My legislation will deal with the taxation of marijuana, and we look forward to refining it to be able to have the tax at a proper level to support government services, but also reasonable enough to choke off black market supply. It's time for us to enter a new era of marijuana policy for research, protecting our children, for economic development, and individual liberties. I strongly urge my colleagues to examine the legislation that we've advanced and be part of this long overdue effort at reform.
I don't believe that you protect people by throwing them in cages. If they are indeed a threat to someone else, you have an excuse to throw them in a cage, especially if they've committed some act of violence against their fellows. This idea that in our society, which is based on individual rights and freedom and a respect for people living their lives as they choose the lives to live, that for us to be taking people and for smoking a weed and putting them in prison or in jail for that is a travesty. It's against everything our founding fathers believed in, and some way our country got away from that. Some way we got to a point where government was looked at as something that's going to watch out for our well-being, and our decision-making would be superimposed by some government officials, whether they're law enforcement or not. So that's one argument that I think that we need to make sure. But the fact is, when I was younger, I smoked marijuana. How would my life have been changed had at some moment a police officer found a little baggie of marijuana in my pocket? I wouldn't have made any of those contributions had I been thrown into jail and had a record of being in possession of drugs? How many other people are having their lives short-circuited this way? It's a tremendous loss of value and wealth and well-being of people in our own country. So that's number one. Number two, we live in a society with limited resources, and if we know that our people are in danger from others who would do them harm, why are we wasting resources on someone who is not threatening their fellow citizens or fellow human beings when we have limited resources, and thus we are using those resources on the wrong people, and especially in today's world. And what a waste of money in terms of the police, what a waste of their time, what a waste of the court's time. And of course we are very happy that we have a judge who's been playing such a prominent role in this. What a waste of judicial time, what a waste of the time of the criminal justice system and the prison system. All of this when there are people who are involved with violent crime against our citizens and we don't have the resources to combat that threat to our citizens. So with that said, I'm just presenting this argument to you and saying to you, reach out to people who are Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Peace and Freedom Party, Greens. This is something that we can all work together on and have our other disagreements. And I think that this is a wonderful thing, that its time has come. And thank you for you doing your part, and I'll try to do mine.
Wow. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. Thank you.
Giving him a drug policy reformist. Welcome to Earl Blumenauer. Wow. Wow. Do we have an amen? Thank you so very much. I welcome you here as part of what is truly a global effort to try and reframe and reform failed and destructive drug policies that have captured the imagination of politicians for far too long. It is true, this has been an area that I've been involved with literally since I was a child legislator, before any of you were born. In 1973, voted to legalize adult use of marijuana in the Oregon legislature. And that was the same time that Oregon became the first state that decriminalized marijuana. And from that moment forward, it has been absolutely clear to me that we're wasting lives, we're wasting resources on a failed policy of prohibition that distracts from things that we can do together. You are here at a fascinating time in our nation's capital. Now, ignore the goofiness today on Capitol Hill, on the floor, where there are some of my Republican colleagues that would have us turn our back on the very victims from the slaughter that is occurring in Paris or in the Middle East. Hopefully, we're better than that. But below the surface, there is an area that you are watching bipartisan support growing. We have had 13 amendments approved in Congress or in committee in the last 2 years moving forward marijuana reform. We've enacted into law the Farr-Rohrabacher Amendment to get the federal government off the backs of state legal medical marijuana. We've enacted into law unraveling the prohibition against hemp. Think what Thomas Jefferson and George Washington must think today, where what they grew on their farms 350 years ago is illegal. Give me a break. We have a working group of Republicans and Democrats alike that have introduced over 16 pieces of legislation. And you just saw my friend and colleague, Cory Booker. It's, as Barney Frank reminded me this summer when we were having dinner, it's finally being introduced in the Senate. We think that's progress in the Senate. You are here at a time to help advance this cause. We hope that you will take time to visit with other friends and colleagues to point out that this effort of drug reform is tied directly to the major issues that confront us here in terms of racial disparity in criminal justice, in terms of wasting federal dollars, in terms of a health problem, an epidemic of opioid deaths, and we can't allow the VA to deal with medical marijuana for our veterans. This is goofy. We ask you to help us focus attention on Capitol Hill and at home. The time is now to reform these marijuana laws. I look forward to working with you as we unroll our program in Oregon, as we move to other states, and as we will make more progress at the federal level. With your help, in 5 years, we will have completely turned this back to the states to deal with as they see fit, like alcohol, and we'll be able to move forward with other major reforms in justice and drug reform. Nothing is more critical for us to show real progress for real lives, moving on, capturing this moment in history. We need your help. We look forward to working with you. Great things lie ahead.
Beginning of the end of drug prohibition in the United States of America. Yes. It's going to happen.
Yes, yes.
Regulate marijuana like wine is going to win. I am convinced that if Steve Collette, who is our treasurer off to my right hand, and Steve Downing, who is an instigator of all of this and a solid force, if we do our jobs right, this initiative is going to pass. And I hate to say that if it doesn't pass, we will not have done our jobs right. People are ready for this. They're beginning to understand. That's all we need. All we need is an open, honest, full discussion of reality. So thank you for doing this. We've got the right initiative. Regulate marijuana like wine. We have opened our arms to lots of people to give recommendations and thoughts, and I think we have formulated an initiative that is really good. Look at it. Spread it around. RegulateMarijuanaLikeWine.com. It's there. It was filed, by the way, today in Sacramento with the Attorney General's office. So we're on our way. Steve Collette is here. He's our treasurer. Steve Downing is virtually my brother now that I have met. Diane Goldstein, you know, she's a member of LEAP also. Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We've got the tools. And then, of course, there's Richard here. Richard Moriarty. Hey, this is his abode. Not too shabby, huh? Richard, thank you for doing this. If we can get people like Richard Moriarty who understands these issues. Dana Rohrabacher, the first highest placed federal official that has joined this movement. He is going to be written in history as being what? The highest federal official that has joined this movement. And he's going to be joined by many others. So I am proud to be here. I tell you the truth, which is now we literally do see this light at the end of the tunnel. It's here, folks. We need to provide the support for this initiative. It's the right vehicle, it's the right time, it's the right place. California leads the country, and some of it is good. And we're going to do this. The thing that has gotten my attention more than anything else is that I have formulated my views from my experience. I was a Navy JAG attorney. I was a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. I've been a judge for 25 years, and I've arrived at this opinion. Diane's opinion and experience is totally different, and she's arrived at the same decision. And Steve's opinion and experiences are really totally different, and he's arrived at the same experiences, and all the rest of us too. It's the right thing. So once again, be proud of yourselves. Thank you again to Richard Moriarty. Thank you again to Patty and to Barbara, and big time thanks again to you. Life is good. Let's get this done, and let's move on. Thank you so much for being here.